You forgot the first rule of remakes, Jill. Don't fuck with the original.
Hey everybody, Think Like a Man 2 is coming to theaters this Friday, and you know what that means.
It means Steve Harvey will be nosing in on our personal business.
Well, that and another episode of Don't F With The Original.
With Nicholas, I'm the VM correspondent for Idiomatic.
And I'm Dimitri, editor-in-chief of Idiomatic.com and movie critic. For those of you who don't know, Don't F With The Original is when there's a sequel or a reboot or a remake coming out. We watch the original film, we review it, and then we use that review to gauge our expectations about this new entry. So in this case, obviously, Think Like a Man 2 means we're going to talk about Think Like a Man.
Yep.
That's a
movie with a huge cast, honestly.
Yeah, 2012, directed by Tim Story, and yeah, that cast is like all really talented too. They're all good. But anyway, what did you think of the movie before we get into that?
It's, to be 100% fair, it's not my kind of thing. This relationship stuff, so I was a little bored.
Would you recommend it to somebody for whom it is their bag, or would you say even in that category,
no, if it is their bag, I would totally recommend it. If relationship dynamics between men and women is your thing, I completely agree. You should watch it. But to me, it was like, I'm kind of bored.
It's like a nail on the board for you.
Yeah.
It's like, interhuman interaction can't do this. I loved it. Okay. I actually thought it was a really big surprise because I missed it when this movie came out. I wanted to see it, and just like the press screening was not convenient for me at the time, and then I missed it because the cast was appealing to me, and I got to see it in the context of this show, and I was like, oh god, I'm so happy I saw this. I really, really dig the shit out of this movie. I thought it was pretty awesome. So what the movie is about, essentially, is you have about, I lost count because there's a lot of them, but essentially 4 couples, I think, is what I want to go with.
I think 5.
5?
Yeah.
Okay, so 5 couples.
Well, one of them is married. So there's the married guy, and then there's you never see his wife, and then there's the 4 other guys, and they're
yeah, and he doesn't actually have his story, the married guy. He's just there going like, I'm happily married and I'm a nice guy. What the hell's going on with you folks?
Like he says the coolest line in the movie.
He's very funny.
Yeah.
He's an essential character. He's not a waste.
Exactly. So I still kind of consider him, but yeah, you're right.
No, you're right. You're right. So, okay, and what it is these are friends who know each other because they play basketball together every weekend, essentially. It seems to be the case. I don't actually know what day of the week they play, but I'm assuming it's a weekend. Yeah. And the thing that unites them, apart from all the guys being friends, is that there's this new book by Steve Harvey that came out that gives relationships advice, and how it's framed is like, I'm going to let you in on the secret minds of men, and this is how you can manipulate them, essentially.
Well, it's basically saying that, in the past, men were, it was easy for women to get men, but now, it's changed. So these are the new rules that women need to learn, and basically he exposed the new rules to the women in his book.
So the movie intercuts between these 6 relationships, well, 5 relationships, honestly. Intercuts between these 5 relationships with explanation of what part of Steve Harvey's book they're dealing with at any given time.
So at first, I think the women get the book, and some of them think it's completely ridiculous, but they find that it actually works, and they basically have the upper hand in the relationship. They get what they want, and then the guys, you realize what's happening, and they get their hands on the book, and they basically find a way to manipulate the women and to get them what they want, and them having the upper hand in the relationship. And, hilarity ensues.
Yeah, no, essentially. One of the interesting parts about this is that Steve Harvey's book, as presented there, is not really about manipulation. It is framed that way so that women will buy it.
Okay.
But really, a lot of it is about self-affirmation. A lot of it is just about you want this to happen, just ask for it.
Yeah.
A lot of his advice just boils down to that. You want this? Ask for it. In some cases is, you want this? That's not reasonable. Stop wanting this.
Yeah.
There's a certain case with that. And when the men use the book to manipulate it, the funny thing about it is they're really manipulating themselves more than the women.
Yeah.
But the men and the women don't really realize that. And that I thought that was an interesting aspect of it. But I wanted to get to how you feel about it.
I'm not the kind of guy that likes movies where, it almost feels like a fight to be in a relationship.
Uh-huh.
Actually believe personally that relationships should happen. And if you have to work so much to them that, you have to manipulate the other person for, to get what you want, and you have to kind of sacrifice to do what the other person likes, I don't think you should be in a relationship with that person to begin with. Like, for example, let's give the example of, the college guy that hasn't grown up, that still loves video games, and he does play video games, and there's nothing wrong with that as an adult.
No.
And she doesn't, so if you're not sharing interests, at a certain point, what are you guys doing together? I mean, maybe they have other stuff in common that the movie didn't show us, but the only thing the movie mentioned is like the video games.
They like pot. They both like pot.
Okay, so yes, they like illicit drugs. It's all good. So it's fine with them. So we know that, but the only thing they really mention that they do together is like video games, where he loves video games, and she's like, it was so stupid. And it's like, from what I got is like, I got that they don't share the interest. So if in your relationship you don't share interest, and you're basically just together for what, sex, maybe you should, okay, it sucks, but you might go for somebody else. So I don't think relationships should be forced that way.
Okay. I disagree with two things. The first is your general statement. I actually do think relationships are work, even if you do have interests in common, because you're not going to date a clone of yourself.
No.
And even if you did, you'd find it incredibly boring, and that relationship would end just as quickly. Mm-hmm. Difference is growth.
Well, yeah, there are certain things that you can complement each other, but like the example I gave of, specific interests, things you like to do. Mm-hmm. I like video games, and I would not, hook up with a girl that likes to go out to bars and drink. It probably would never work, because we would never see each other,
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, you can complement each other on certain things, but I feel there's certain things you should have together and not force it,
Yeah. But where I was getting at, though, is that those differences that are pretty key will come with differences that are not as convenient.
Okay.
It's a give and take. You can't custom made your mate so that they have this thing that you like and that you find useful, but not this thing that would naturally come with it.
Okay.
Everybody comes with baggage. Everybody comes with, like, when I say baggage, I mean like fucking like 6 carry-ons. It's like everybody has a personal history that's large and inconvenient and a pain in the ass. And that's even if you're dating somebody with the same interests as you do. I agree with you that you should date people with the same interests as you, of course, because that's the element you have in common, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I do feel to a certain degree we undervalue the importance of having maybe the same values instead of the same interests.
As well. Values are important, and maybe also wants for the future,
Yeah.
If you feel that money is not an issue, and it's okay if I live in a farm for the rest of my life, as a poor guy, and the other person wants to be a millionaire, there's a problem there, just saying, so also figure out what you want for the future. So I did like the part where they asked, what's your short-term and your long-term goals. That's important.
Yeah.
But when you're trying to mold that person into, like the dreamer, she kind of wanted him to, be serious about stuff. If you're trying to mold the person a little bit, I don't really like that.
Mm-hmm. What I'm seeing is I'm seeing very different interpretations of what's going on in the film between you and me. So what I'd like to do is then we're going to talk about each storyline separately now that we've sort of established how we differ. So you start with the guy who needs to grow up.
Yeah.
And his girlfriend. And you said that they have nothing in common.
Well,
apart from pop.
Yeah.
Which is what I added. And it's because the scene that they share at one point is a smoking scene, but what they're trying to show you is that there was a point in her life where she was exactly like him.
Okay.
And there's a reason why she let him have all the video games and toys and all that in the house, is because there was a point in her life where she wasn't bothered by it.
Okay.
And I don't agree with you that it's a thing about interests. What it is a thing about where you see yourself in the future. He's the one guy who, when asked that question, could not answer it.
Okay.
He's a guy who stopped living with forward momentum. He started living in the past. So I don't think she's bothered by the toys.
Okay.
Because she's just as bothered with the couch, and the couch is not a toy.
Oh, I was bothered by the couch. I think it was gross. Yeah.
But she's bothered
Yeah.
by all of it.
Yeah.
And what it is, she's bothered by them carrying the past with them and not building a future.
Okay.
The toys and the video games are only a representation of that
Okay.
for her. I don't think she's bothered by the video games. In fact, they say in the dialogue that she used to be into all that shit with him. But she's no longer into it. But I think she's no longer into it because she's the only one caring about where this couple is headed.
Okay.
Whereas he's just like, oh, why can't we just keep things as they are? I like this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the thing about it is that I think I agree with her more than you would because I know we differ about this. I think you're a person who's like, who would understand his argument. Like, well, we're happy right now. It's your fucking problem. You know what I mean? Whereas I actually understand where she's coming from. It's like, yes, but, you know, there's such things as life ambitions and trying to build towards something, a family or whatnot, if that's what she wants. Like, her wants should matter as much as his in the relationship. Yeah. And if her wants have changed, maybe it means that they should break up. Or maybe he needs to maybe consider what's going on there. Yeah.
But that's the thing, though. You have to consider your wants. And if he doesn't want as much as, you know, what she wants, there's the problem there. And, you know, I think it's bad to force to have one peg fit into the other.
Yeah, but at the same time, at what point is she an enabler? Like, at one point is she just like, oh, well, you know, you can have your shitty job, I have a good job, and you can live off my money while you pursue your toy dreams. Yeah. Or at one point, can you go like, hey, look, you know what? I'm tired of being the only one who pulls her own weight. Get a better job. When I dated you in college, you wanted to get this career. Why haven't you started it?
Yeah, that's true.
So I don't think what the story is about, that particular story is about her manipulating him, although that's what she starts doing, but then it backfires when she starts doing that. Yeah. Because what she tries to do is get him to start applying for a job, start thinking about his future and all that. And she does it by putting pressure on him. I'm going to throw all your toys away. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to hire a decorator. I'm going to make your life so fucking uncomfortable that you'll need to change. What I think is the wrong approach, but it is presented as the wrong approach. Okay. Because then it backfires and it's like, I'm just going to fake it. I don't. And the reason why he says he's going to fake it is because he's not ready to want that for himself. Yeah. And you can't ask anybody, man or woman, to make effective changes in themselves if they don't want it for themselves. They can't do it for you. They have to do it for themselves. Okay. That eventually backfires for both of them, and they're like, okay, we're done. Yeah. You know? And what changes is that he realizes, like, he's going out with his friends, and they're like, are you going to that interview? And he realizes, oh, it wasn't just my bitchy girlfriend who wanted me to get an interview. Even my friends are like, it's a job. It's a good job. Why don't you want it? What's wrong with you? Why don't you? Like, yeah, I guess I kind of want it. Yeah. And that's when he starts wanting things for himself again. Mm. And that's when the relationship starts to mend. Okay. So it's not about being pro-manipulation. It's about...
Manipulation doesn't work.
Yeah, much. Manipulation doesn't work. Okay. If you know, it's about like this guy needed to be woken up, and I think there's a truth in that. But you can't do it by saying, do it for me. You have to convince him that he has to do it for himself. Yeah. Which his friends do a much better job doing than she does.
That's true.
All right, let's get to the Dreamer.
Yeah.
Dreamer versus a CEO woman. I like that storyline a lot, actually. Until the final act where I'm left ambivalent. And that's not a bad place to be, but it did leave me ambivalent.
The final act there was icky to me.
We start off with him getting dumped by his girlfriend because he's like, I'm going to change my career again and I'm going to start this thing now. And she's like, oh, fuck that. And she leaves. Yeah. And he meets this CEO woman, and he sort of presents himself as being closer to his dream than he actually is. Yeah. And she presents herself as not being as powerful and as successful as she is because she finds that she has a hard time finding men when she presents herself as successful.
Well, they don't mention it pretty much. You know, when he basically says, let's not talk about work," she says, "Yeah, fine, let's not talk about work," and she's super happy about that.
And of course, when she realizes that he's actually pretty poor and you know, working hard to get what he wants, but you know, nowhere near it yet. He wants to be a chef, by the way.
Yeah. For now.
Yeah, and he's a waiter right now, who's functioning as occasional sous chef. Like that, he's learning the trade of how to run a restaurant, essentially.
Yeah.
When she finds that out, she's scandalized and not happy about it. He's actually cool with her being successful, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Like, he learns that, and he gets insecure, because, like, oh, shit, I can't compete with that. And his friends go like, then don't.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah.
He finds another way, you know, I can give her this that, you know, other people can't. And, yeah, there he goes. You know, he finds another way, you know.
Yeah. So how did you feel about the storyline?
That storyline was great until she dumps him for a successful guy. And I was like, at that point, you know, I kind of felt a little, you know, less good about her. And then, you know, at the end, when they get back together, I'm like, I didn't quite like that because my sympathy for her were kind of gone.
Yeah, well, she does something that's a terrible mistake on her part.
Yeah.
It really... she's the bad guy. And it's like... what I like about this movie is that it's not always the man that's at fault.
Yeah.
Like, the first storyline we talked about, the guy has some issues and needs to take better care of himself.
But the girl as well.
And the girl needs to be more forthright about what she wants instead of trying to manipulate him.
Yeah.
But in this one, the guy did nothing wrong. It's really all about this woman who needs to understand that that her needs are not financial, that women have been sort of groomed and taught to think that, you know, marry a rich guy, you'll be secure. And I was like, yeah, but you don't need that because you are rich. You are secure. You are always going to bounce on your feet financially. You're smart. You're successful. You reached the top before anyone else. You broke a glass ceiling. I'm pretty sure you're the top of the top.
Yeah.
But she still thinks she needs to go with somebody richer than her because she's been groomed to think that way, as many, many women of our generation still are.
Yeah.
And so she dumps him, and it's a terrible mistake.
Yeah.
It's a terrible, terrible mistake. And I agree with you. Like, the end where they get back together is a little bit like, I don't know. Like, does he need you? Does he really? Should he want you? But at the same time, you know, we allow men to make that kind of mistakes all the time in movies and romantic comedies. All the time. And I'm like, why can't the woman be the one to make the mistake? I'm not bothered by that.
I don't like when the men do those mistakes in those movies to begin with. So, I mean, yeah, I can see your point that, man, you know, if you want to go to movie equality, yes, okay, but it's not the kind of storyline I like that, oh no, I should have dumped you, it was a big mistake. I just hate that. It's so overused.
What I like about this storyline in Think Like a Man is that it reflects something that's real. I mean, like, and we're beginning to talk about it. The fact that women are finally getting the wage and the success that they've worked for.
Minus 30%, but yeah, keep going.
On average.
On average, yeah.
On average. You know, but they're finally getting the place that they richly deserve in the workforce, as supervisors, as CEOs, as the big dogs that they are, you know? And, but we are still raising women as if they don't have that potential, and to seek the sort of relationships where they should seek financial security from a man. And we're also raising men to think like that as well. Like, Michael Ealy's character is not bothered by it, but, you know, a lot of men are still raised like, well, you gotta be the breadwinner. Oh, your women's making more money than you. What the fuck?
Yeah, you're 1/3 of a man, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, no,
we're still raising people like that. So, and it touches on that and shows the devastating effects on what could have been a beautiful relationship. Which is why I almost feel the story would have almost been better if they had one tragic couple that don't work out. And it's because of stupid societal expectations. I would have liked that.
I guess, yeah.
And that's why I'm more ambivalent about them coming back together. Not because I'm not willing to forgive her. I'm totally willing to forgive her. Okay. She's loving, and she helped him start his business. She gave him very sound financial advice and all that. Mm-hmm. So, you know, she wanted to make that step, and then societal pressures and opportunity came her way, and she's a businesswoman, business person. Opportunity comes your way. It's really hard to pass it up, you know.
I guess, yeah.
I like that story. I like that story because Michael Ealy is such a charming actor.
Yeah, he is. That, yeah.
And he plays the dreamer really well, where you don't hate him for, you know, changing his career midlife and just going like, I'm going to be a chef now. Like, it sounds crazy when he says it, and he says it in a way that you understand how it would sound crazy to his ex-girlfriend.
Yeah.
And at the same time, by the time you've reached about half the movie, you're totally rooting for him. It's like, oh, this guy's got his shit together. He's the real deal.
Yeah.
You know?
Basically, he can cook, which is pretty much the main thing you need to be a great chef.
Yeah, no, but also he's working hard like
Yeah.
crazy, and you can see he's passionate about it, and he doesn't see hard work as an obstacle. He sees it as a way in, you know?
Yeah.
No, he's the real deal, and I like that story a lot. But I agree with you. Her coming back to him made the thing a little bit uncomfortable, and there's a part of me that feels that maybe the story would have worked better if he had said no.
Also, you know, okay, I know it was played for comedy, but, you know, yelling at his new customers, he's just opened a business and delaying the service. Not great.
No, not
Just
cool.
saying.
Not cool. Not on his opening. I
Yeah.
noticed that too. I was like, hey, lady, what the fuck?
Can we talk about this afterwards? You know?
No, and actually, it would have been nice if she had waited. Like, if he had been like, no, look, this matters to me,
Yeah.
and you matter less now because you passed up the chance to matter more.
Yeah.
So, wait. And then if she had waited and they had a talk, I would have been more for their reunification.
Yeah.
Because it would have been a lesson in humility for her.
Oh, that would have been good. Yeah, you're right.
You know?
Let's remake this movie with that scene. Just that scene change would be great.
Anyway, alright, moving on to
Let's do the player.
The Player. This is my favorite storyline.
Yeah.
I like that one a lot.
I like the actor, first of all, plays the player. He
Yeah.
was in The 40-Year-Old Virgin. Really funny guy.
Yeah, he's played by Romani Malco.
Yeah. And basically, I think he just wants to hook up with a girl. And, you know, just hook up. I'm not sure at the beginning he even wants a relationship. You know, he just wants to... You know,
No, he doesn't. He just saw opportunity.
Yeah. I don't know why he kept going with the 90, you know, as soon as he learned that, you know, 90-day rule,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why he kept going and not just, you know, go to another fish.
Because he likes her.
Yeah. He I don't know, he doesn't like her that much when he learns about the 90-day rule.
He's mad.
Okay.
He's mad.
He's mad and he's trying to, you know, get the cookie, as he said. He's like, I'll show her 90 days, I'll make her break it, you know.
Yeah, well, he's mad, and he's like, I'll show her, but the thing is, that's what the movie wants you to pick up on, is like, wait a minute, why aren't you moving on to the next thing? Like, what's wrong with you? It's because he likes her.
Okay.
And you know, when she's delaying and keeps pushing him off, every time he's about to bolt, every time he's like, okay, this is too much work, I'm done, he finds out something that he likes about her. He finds out something that makes him want to stay. Like, he's actually, the only reason why he lasted that long is because it's the first girl he's liked.
Okay.
For a very long time since his ex-girlfriend. They mentioned it in passing that he got really hurt in a previous relationship, and he's been a player ever since.
Okay.
What I like about the storyline is that it shows you the downside of being a player. The downside of being a player is that you don't get to meet anyone, because he's so good at projecting the perfect person for this woman who's just gobbling it all up because she just wants that perfect person and is in fact not that interested in him as a person, really. Like, all he does is shower them with backhanded compliments.
Yeah.
And it's all about the girl, right? And the girl's going like, yeah, wow, I really want to be with this guy. And she fucks him, and she's like, oh, it wasn't about me after all. And, like, what it shows you is that the women who get played, it's a little bit their fault. Because if you had been interested in him as a person, you wouldn't have fallen for his bullshit.
That's a good point.
And her, by putting up that 90-day wall, it forces her to go like, oh, wait, it's getting too close. So tell me about yourself. And by doing that, she gets interested in him for real. She discovers who he is for real. He gets to share that. And he gets to... And she... Every time he's about to bolt, she shows that she has genuine interest in who he is. I was like, oh, I showed your music to my friend producer. Oh my God, like, you used to do music? Show me one of your songs. I was like, nobody's ever asked me that before. Because she's genuinely interested in him.
Okay.
And for him, that's what makes him like her, where he's like, a woman is actually interested in what I have to say. That's never happened to me before.
It's interesting.
Because I have that veneer.
I did like also the fact that you could see from the beginning that she's she's a victim of the player quite often.
Yeah.
You know, those scenes where the guy kept calling her Michelle instead of Maya. I was like that was a funny part of the movie. He's like just at random out of nowhere. As soon as you've just forgotten about it. Hey Michelle, call me. He just
every time the movie slows down, they add that scene where it's like, "Hey Michelle," and she's always with that same friend who's like, "Why won't he learn her name?" You see that like her 90-day rule is essentially compensating for her insecurity. She's been played
quite
enough
often,
times that she doesn't feel secure that a guy might actually like her for real and isn't just after the cookie.
Yeah.
So when she finds the book. Even though he hasn't followed a damn thing about the book. Like, he's like, oh, she's read the book, stupid bro. Can't believe it. And he didn't do anything about it, because he kind of likes her.
He did have the chapter of the 90-day rule, like, underlined with,
Yeah, but he hasn't initiated any counters.
Yeah.
He read in the book going like, well, you want to bypass it? Say I love you. And then he had that moment where he could have said I love you, and it was like, no. Not doing it. Not doing it for that reason. Not doing it. And then when he meets the couple, and he's like, "Oh, this is my girlfriend. That's my girlfriend." He's actually sincere about it. It wasn't like I'm using the book and I'm using this occasion. Because if he was using that occasion, he wouldn't have hesitated. He's hesitating because he's actually sincere about it.
Okay.
He didn't use the book. But she assumes automatically he must have used the book because it's circled, and also because she's been hurt so much. That she can't believe for a second that a guy might actually like her instead of just wanting to fuck her.
Yeah, that'll teach him. One of the pet peeves of mine: don't write in books. Okay, books are nice and precious. Don't never write in them.
Oh no, books are meant to be read and dog-eared around. I have no problems. Like, as long as you read the text on it.
No, I don't like the whole underlining thing. It's pain.
I disagree with you.
Anyway, The Mama's Boy is the next one, which I thought was also kind of weak. It's just, okay, I don't know if it got resolved or if it resolved itself, as in his mother, got somebody else, so she doesn't care as much as him anymore, so they're scot-free, and I thought that was just, okay, it works in the end, and I really, was rooting for her and the kid as well, because the kids seem to really like the guy, but, I'm not sure how it got resolved,
No, I think what they're showing is more that he has been spending a lot of time with this other girl because he was faking it. And the minute he sort of abandoned his mom just a little bit more, well, she started seeking support elsewhere than from him.
But no, because she was following the 90-day rule. She didn't mention that. So that thing had been going for 90 days. So, I just feel like that one, they didn't resolve it. It just resolved itself, So maybe it's something that, hey, sometimes, relationships just happen, by luck or something like that I'm supposed to get from that.
But he stood up to his mom long before he found out about the other guy.
He was about to stand up, and she didn't mind because she had the other guy upstairs, So
No, he did stand up to her.
Well, it's easy to do the first step of standing up, but then when she starts laying in the guilt...
that's the part where with mothers, that's the hard part, isn't it? Yeah.
So but she didn't lay in the guilt because there was a guy upstairs, So that's why I figured, I was really eager to see, what's going to happen with the mother, and how is he going to actually say? Is she going to say, all right, fine, you're grown up and whatever? But she's like, no, I'm with this guy right now. Just go away for now,
Well, I think what the movie's trying to do is to show you that he shouldn't feel responsible for his mother's emotional needs.
Okay.
That she should be able and is able to get it elsewhere, and that he shouldn't carry that burden. So that's why they introduced the boyfriend at the end, just because the story is not about a guy abandoning his mother for his wife. It's more about him realizing that he's not responsible to fill that need in her life.
Yeah.
So they needed to show the boyfriend.
Okay.
But you're right, there is some logistics problems because of it. I didn't realize until you pointed out, it's true, it hadn't been 90 days yet, because the player never reaches 90 days. So she did start the relationship before he started dating the new girl. You're right, that's a good point. It's not, to be honest, it's not my favorite storyline. I think it has its heart in the right place. I don't think anybody can disagree with the lesson there.
Yeah.
But he's the one who lost my sympathies the most with his the fake phone call there thing, where he's saying it's from his work when it's really from his mom.
With a matter like that, it is work though. I really felt bad for the kid though, because the kid seemed to really like the guy. The kid gets attached, and maybe he needs a father or something, and it's like, it's like that. That just sucked for him.
Fun question though, like Steve Harvey says in his book in the movie, single mothers they'll try to not present their kids until later in the relationship, so as not to expose their kids to a lot of men that will come and go in their lives.
Yeah.
And Steve Harvey was arguing, but the thing about it is that if you present your kid like 5 months into your relationship and the two don't like each other, you know that you're going to have to break that relationship off. So you might want to present the kid earlier than that to see if it's even worth investing that time.
Yeah.
Because your kid will decide whether or not you're pursuing that relationship.
Yeah.
And how do you feel about that? Because like that, I find that's an excellent point, but at the same time, I find the idea of protecting your kid from a revolving door of men is also a good point. Like, how do you feel about that? Because I thought that brought up an interesting counter-argument to a common wisdom.
Well, it never actually happened to me, but I would think maybe I think she did a little fast after the first date. Maybe wait. Like you don't want to waste 5 months, like Steve Harvey says, but maybe wait a week. 3 or 4 dates, not a week, but 2 or 3 weeks. It's not as bad as 5 months. If you like the guy, if he's going somewhere, and then you can present the kid to him.
She didn't do it on the first date, by the way.
Really?
Because coffee was her first date with him, and she mentioned at the end of that date that she had a kid.
Okay, so it was the second date. So yeah, you're right.
Presuming there weren't dates in between. Presuming.
Yeah.
I don't remember if they mentioned if it was a direct date after that, but who cares? Right, yeah, whatever.
Maybe it was a great first date. Who knows? Well, the married guy and the divorced guy as well were in the movie.
Which they're not really storylines as much as intermittent punchlines. These two, which is fine. Like their role is crucial as that, but
I think I did like when the married guy says when he's going home and it's like I don't have to go home. I want to go home. I love my wife, and it's like yeah, exactly. That's how it's supposed to be. If you feel like you're being shackled, there's something wrong with the relationship. If you feel like there's not oh well, I can't do anything I want anymore with her, and I guess that's what they realize. It's like it's true. No, we'd rather be this is cool, but would we rather be with the person we were dating, or would we rather be doing this?
Yeah. Well, it's the crucial moment in the movie where essentially what he's saying is that you're not victims.
Yeah.
You're like both the men and the women in the movie look at themselves as the victims of the relationship game. And he's like, yeah, no, I'm perfectly happy. I don't view myself as a victim. And that's where all the other guys go like, wait a minute, like the guy who won't grow up goes like, yeah, I just applied to a job I really wanted. I'm kind of winning here any way you look at it.
Yeah.
Hey, wait a minute, I'm not a victim. All the guys, except of course Michael Ealy, because he just got dumped and he didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
All the other guys are going like, hey, wait a minute. And yeah, I love that moment too.
Yeah, I think it's sad that he probably stole all the scenes he's in.
Oh no, but he's funny. Him and Kevin Hart are characters that are there to lighten the mood and create a group dynamic. So when they're there, they sort of shine. It's sort of like, and I realize this is going to be the weirdest analogy ever, but it's sort of like Storm and Nightcrawler in the X-Men. They can't carry a solo book to save their lives.
Yeah.
But when you look at the X-Men together, you're like, you remember Storm and Nightcrawler,
I guess.
That's what they're there for.
That is a weird analogy.
Yeah. Alright, so next week, we are talking about how to train your dragon. The trick is to acknowledge that dragons don't exist, and then move on with your life.
Dragons do exist. On the island of Komodo, there are dragons there. Biology.
No. That was I got served science style.
Yep. Well, one of them is married, So there's the married guy, and then there's like you never see his wife, and then there's the four other guys, and they're
Yeah, and we don't actually he doesn't actually have his story, the married guy. He's just there, go like, I'm happily married and I'm a nice guy. What the hell's going on with you folks?
Like he says the coolest line in the movie.
Oh, he's very funny.
Yeah.
He's an essential character. He's not a waste.
Exactly. So I still kind of consider him, but yeah, you're right. But,
No, you're right. You're right. So, okay, and what it is these are friends who know each other because they play basketball together every weekend, essentially. It seems to be the case. I don't actually know what day of the week they play, but I'm assuming it's a weekend. Yeah. And the thing that unites them, apart from all the guys being friends, is that there's this new book by Steve Harvey that came out that gives relationships advice, and how it's framed is like, I'm going to let you in on the secret minds of men, and this is how you can manipulate them, essentially.
Well, it's basically saying that, in the past, men were, it was easy for women to get men, but now, it's changed. So these are the new rules that women need to learn, and basically he exposed the new rules to the women in his book.
So the movie intercuts between these 6 relationships, well, 5 relationships, honestly. Intercuts between these 5 relationships with explanation of what part of Steve Harvey's book they're dealing with at any given time.
So at first, I think the women get the book, and some of them think it's completely ridiculous, but they find that it actually works. And they basically have the upper hand in the relationship. They get what they want, and then the guys, you realize what's happening, and they get their hands on the book, and they basically find a way to manipulate the women and to get them what they want, and them having the upper hand in the relationship. And, hilarity ensues.
Yeah, no, essentially. One of the interesting parts about this is that Steve Harvey's book, as presented there, is not really about manipulation. It is framed that way so that women will buy it.
Okay.
But really, a lot of it is about self-affirmation. A lot of it is just about like, oh, you want this to happen, just ask for it.
Yeah.
Like a lot of his advice just boils down to that. You want this? Ask for it. In some cases is, you want this? That's not reasonable. Stop wanting this.
Yeah.
There's a certain case with that. And when the men use the book to manipulate it, the funny thing about it is they're really manipulating themselves more than the women.
Yeah.
But the men and the women don't really realize that. And I thought that was an interesting aspect of it. But I wanted to get to how you feel about it.
I'm not the kind of guy that likes movies where, it almost feels like a fight to be in a relationship. I actually believe personally that relationships should happen. And if you have to work so much to them that, you have to manipulate the other person for, to get what you want, and you have to kind of sacrifice to do what the other person likes, I don't think you should be in a relationship with that person to begin with. Like, for example, let's give the example of, the college guy that hasn't grown up, that still loves video games, and he does play video games, and there's nothing wrong with that as an adult.
No.
And she doesn't, so if you're not sharing interests at a certain point, what are you guys doing together? I mean, maybe they have other stuff in common that the movie didn't show us, but the only thing the movie mentioned is like the video games.
They like pot.
And stuff, so I was a little bored.
Would you recommend it to somebody for whom it is their bag, or would you say even in that category,
no, if it is their bag, I would totally recommend it. If relationship dynamics between men and women is your thing, I completely agree. You should watch it, but to me, it was like, I'm kind of bored.
It's like a nail on the board for you.
Yeah,
it's like, human interaction can't do this. I loved it. Okay. I actually thought it was a really big surprise because I missed it when this movie came out. I wanted to see it, and just like the press screening was not convenient for me at the time, and then I missed it because the cast was appealing to me, and I got to see it in the context of this show, and I was like, oh god, I'm so happy I saw this. I really, really dig the shit out of this movie. I thought it was pretty awesome. So what the movie is about essentially is you have about, I lost count because there's a lot of them, but essentially 4 couples I think is what I want to go with.
I think 5.
5?
Yeah.
Okay, so 5 couples.
You forgot the first rule of remakes, Jill. Don't fuck with the original.
Hey everybody, Think Like a Man 2 is coming to theaters this Friday, and you know what that means.
It means Steve Harvey will be nosing in on our personal business.
Well, that and another episode of Don't F With the Original.
With Nicholas, I'm the VM correspondent for Idiomatic.
And I'm Dimitri, editor-in-chief of Idiomatic.com and movie critic. For those of you who don't know, Don't F With the Original is when there's a sequel or a reboot or a remake coming out. We watch the original film, we review it, and then we use that review to gauge our expectations about this new entry. So in this case, obviously, Think Like a Man 2 means we're going to talk about Think Like a Man.
Yep.
Let's see,
Movie with a huge cast, honestly.
Yeah, 2012, directed by Tim Story, and yeah, that cast is like all really talented too.
Yeah,
they're all good. But anyway, what did you think of the movie before we get into that?
It's, to be 100% fair, it's not my kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
This